Welcome to another episode of Monster Men.
I hope that got caught.
That was terrible. Give it the gar. Gar. That's your thing. Come on.
I'm sorry.
All right. One of the most popular episodes we did was the vampire, the first one we ever did. Talking about vampires, and we got a lot of flack from fans of Twilight because
Sure did.
I haven't read Twilight. I haven't seen Twilight yet. I knocked Twilight.
I'm surrounded by Twilight, and I knock Twilight.
Now, the thing is, I was curious as to whether people who like this book would actually like something like Dracula.
No.
You
know what? And that's what you got in trouble for the first time, was throwing the
No!
Twilight book. Way to go.
it landed safely.
It is. It's fine.
Edward is right off camera. He doesn't show up on film. He's a vampire.
He zipped right up and caught it.
Do Twilight vampires show up on film?
Sparkle on film.
We're going to talk about the movie Fright Night, and then there's a remake of Fright Night that came out that bombed at the box office, which just goes to show that lovey-dovey vampires right now are more in demand than the kind of stuff that we like.
Right.
So I wanted to talk today about vampire books, literature.
Yes, and there's plenty.
There's plenty of them. And I went back to think about how I loved vampire movies, and then that was the one day I was like, I'm going to read Dracula. And then, wow, was Dracula slower and harder to read than I ever thought.
Yeah, this is a tough book. This version that you see here, this is what they put out for the YA section in bookstores. So it's a repackaging of the Dracula story, but it's not told any differently. It's the story, but in a nice looking book.
Yeah.
And my daughter, who reads everything, kind of went, I think, a couple of pages and said, "Wow, that's hard."
Well, it's written as like you're reading people's letters and diary entries.
Right. It's the epistolary way
Epistolary.
of writing, where it's not a straight narrative. You're just getting everything from, here's a flash of a newspaper, here's a diary, here's this, so it's not a single narration point. It's coming from everywhere. And it's written, it was written over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So we don't talk like this. We don't read like this, so it's difficult.
And the Dracula, without giving this away, the means of destroying Dracula is not a stake, and it's not sunlight. So,
It's a little
vampire
different.
movies have gone in a different direction from that. But
you should read this.
yeah, I think
By all means.
Now, one of my favorite vampire books was Stephen King's Salem's Lot, which a lot of people know from the movie.
Right.
If you read, actually, in this version, I think there's a foreword by Stephen King, and he talks about this was his attempt at writing Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
And
In a new century.
yeah,
Right.
and it's awesome, and it takes its time, and you get to know the people in the town, and then you get to see the town fall apart. So it's not just about vampires; it's about what goes on behind closed doors.
Well, it's what he does best. He populates these towns with these characters that are just completely unforgettable.
One thing I love about this book is the way, when you look into a vampire's eyes, it can entrance you. The way he describes what somebody is thinking when they're looking into the eye of the vampire,
Right.
And the vampire is very different than he is in the movie. He's not a big blue Nosferatu-looking thing.
Which I thought was it was cool the way they did that for the
It was
TV
cool.
show.
Now, there's a remake of Salem's Lot that was horrible. Rob Lowe and Rutger Hauer. That was trying to stay more true
I
to
just
the
got
book.
a chill. I shivered just thinking.
Yeah, that ain't worth it. But another one that I don't know if the Twilight crowd would dig Salem's Lot, but Stephen King has sold a lot of books, so I say this is I watch The Night Stalker every year, and every couple of years I grab this and I reread it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's.
I think that. No, I don't think they'll like this. I was going to try to make a case saying they would. I don't think they'll like this at all.
I don't know. Now we already talked about Let the
In.
Right Winner Let Me In. You should definitely read this one if you're. Again, I think it takes some patience. It's not so much mainstream, but this is a hell of a read.
And it made two hell of good movies.
Yeah.
So that's how you know the concept is really good, when it can carry through on two movies, and
Yes.
Americans can't screw it up on remakes. So it's got to be good.
The most flack we got for the first vampire show we did, was that we did not mention True Blood.
You have to forgive us though, because I don't know if you've noticed that we're two guys. So really,
Having said that, as a guy, I love True Blood because there's a lot of good-looking women in that show, and there's a lot of.
but I'm thinking about the books. I'm not going to read a book called A Sookie Stackhouse mystery, or whatever they call these.
To be honest, we're only mentioning this because we have not read the Sookie Stackhouse books. I love the show True Blood. I think I get a kick out of it. It's funny. It's a fresh take on vampires. I get a kick. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but I do look forward to it. I think season 2 was really good.
I have to actually start watching those. So my wife loves the books, and she bought every single one. Once we got a couple of these, then I got her the Nook, and she bought every new one.
I figure someday I'll be on a plane and I'll read the first one, and we'll go from there. But,
right.
How the heck do you even say that first name?
Charlene.
Charlene Harris.
Yeah.
And what are these? Sookie Stackhouse novels.
A Sookie Stackhouse novel. See, I just look at this. It looks too much like...
yeah, they look like kid books.
Shopaholic or something. I don't know. No offense. It's just we weren't exposed to it as guys reading books. That's just the way it was. That's the way it pans out.
What's this one?
This is a cool one. This is They Hunger by Scott Nicholson. This is kind of like... This is vampires in the mountains. And they're living in these caves. And there's no humanity about them. They are literally just... They're just vampires that prey on you, and it's just a function of how they live, how they have to do it.
Sounds like Al Qaeda.
They want to smoke them out. The cool thing in this was, you actually root for the vampires because they're just doing what they do. The people in it were such scumbags in it that you were like going, "All right, come on, go get them, and let's see how you get them." So the vampires really weren't necessarily the bad guys in this because they were just pure instinct. But the people who have choices between good and bad, most of them really made bad choices. So this is cool in that there is no human element in the vampire. It is just a vampire. It's a beast, a monster, which is what we love. So, cool book.
Cool. That reminds me, one of the other comments I got was, I didn't mention, some of you may have seen John Carpenter's Vampires with them. What's his name? James
Woods.
James Woods. That was based on this book, Vampires by John Stakely. Great name for a vampire novelist. I remember I bought this book on a whim in Cambridge, Massachusetts at a bookstore. I was like on a lunch break. I saw vampires, picked it up. I love this book. It's not cool book. It's not the most... it ain't hardcore literature or anything like that.
In fact, I don't know if he ever wrote anything else after that. I think that might have been.
He's dead now.
Is he dead?
Yeah.
Hi, John. Thanks.
Maybe he's undead. This book is, and all I kept thinking was, there are a couple of flaws in this book. If they should make a movie out of this. They should make a movie. I saw the trailer for Vampires, and I was like, oh, they made a movie out of this. The trailer looked like they nailed it, and then the movie blew.
Yeah, it was at a real ebb for John Carpenter.
This one, when we talked about like what we love in vampires, these are guys who hunt vampires for money, and they would like go into like what they call a nest, with a house, and they're in like an old abandoned house, and they're in the basement, and they would like blow up the house and like pull away the walls with a crane to let sunlight in.
Yeah, they had these cool methods of just breaking
chainmail with like halogen light crosses and crossbows with a line attached to a winch, and they would
they pull them out into the sun.
Pull out the vampire into the sunlight. Then the vampires figure out the leader of the group's name.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Oh crap! Now they got my number." And then he brings in another dude who's a gunman, and again, I felt like the ending of the book is a little rushed. I went back and reread it,
right,
and I was like, still a fun read though.
That's a really cool book,
and worth picking up.
I'll tell you, the book that defined vampires for me in the '80s was Brian Lumley's series called Necroscope. And
I never read that one.
Yeah, it has vampires, and also has this guy Harry who kind of goes through this continuum. It's kind of like a time travel, alternate universe thing. The vampires here are so terrifying that if something like that was ever real, and if you saw it, you would drop dead of a stroke just on seeing it. You wouldn't have to worry about them biting you and changing because you'd be dead before they even got a chance. And it's really cool. There's like, I think there's 6 or 7 books in the series, and they're big. They're big, hefty volumes, but they are so worth it.
I'll have to track that one.
Yeah, that's, to me, that's the best vampire series ever written.
Oh,
I'd say without a doubt.
high praise from a published author. The last book we're going to talk about caused a lot of headlines. It's caught a lot of eyes. It's actually being made into a movie.
Is it?
Wash from Serenity.
Right.
Is going to be. He's not Abraham Lincoln, but Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter.
Maybe the best title of 2011. I'll give it that.
And here he is with a headless or a head in his hand and an axe behind his back. I read this book. I had to read it. I have not read Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, which is the other one this guy wrote. This guy started a trend now, historical.
Yeah.
He's taking,
Well, he's taking classics and then putting, monsters and stuff.
I got a kick out of this book, but it's a little slow. A friend of mine who she loves, I don't know if she loves Twilight, but she read all the Twilights. She couldn't get through this book.
I'm gonna go look at my Breaking Dawn magazine right now. Here you go. Keep talking about that. Robin Pattinson.
But one thing I had not thought about things like the Dred Scott and the Emancipation Proclamation and historical things that I haven't talked about since 8th grade social studies. And I'm like, oh, if I had read this book, it probably would have made those things more real to me. Did
he free the vampire slaves?
He freed the slaves mostly because vampires were preying upon slaves.
So it's historically accurate.
Yes. So I got a kick out of it. It's definitely a slow book, though, because it's not like vampires or
Right.
a dollar sign.
Well, because he writes in the style of somebody writing in the 19th century.
But I was impressed with the work that the guy put into this book.
Right.
It's kind of like when you read the, and we'll talk about these books in another time, the Zombie Survival Guide and World War Z, Max Brooks. The amount of thought and research he put into those
crazy.
books. Whether you like those books or not, you have to give the guy props for the amount of thought he put into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I don't know, I would say if you're a vampire book fan, read this. If I'm not going to say run out.
You know what?
Come over my
I
house
haven't
and
read it, so I can't say. I tried Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. I got 50 pages in. That's my mark. And if at 50 pages I'm not grabbed, I'm old enough now where I don't have time to waste on a book I don't want to read, so I chucked it. I resold it on half.com, which is a good thing to do with your books if you don't want them.
We got enough here. If you out there in Monster Man land have a vampire book that you want to recommend to us, let us know and we'll mention it on another future episode.
Yeah, we'll read it too. Recommend it, we'll read it, we'll talk about it.
Definitely. So that's it. So go out there, hit your library, hit Amazon.com, hit your local bookstore, and keep the light on at night after you're done reading. And we'll see you in the next Monster Man.